Good day, everyone. Trust you're doing well today. So, let's see what's happening in the market lately. The All Share Index closed yesterday at 238,682 points. So, that's a reduction of 0.17% from the previous ASI on Monday, right? So, market capitalization stood at 158.3 trillion. That's basically a market loss of about 259 billion in value. Now, top gainers were Nimet, Name Insurance, Regaline, Link Assurance, UPDC Rate, CMFC. Top losers were Fitting, FTN Cocoa, International Energies, Livestock, Omatech, FCMB, Maybeka. Now, let's analyze some stocks and see what's actually going on in the market. So, first off, we'll take a look at ASI because, ASI has been really dropping. So basically, there are a lot of factors responsible for ASI dropping, right? But I'll quickly highlight some, reasons, some important factors contributing to the daily loss of, ASI weakness, right? All these analysts that works with fund managers, the smart money guys, the smart money buyers, institutional buyers. Most of these analysts, they have tools, for conducting research. Now, they've observed that FPIs are actually leaving the Nigeria equity space. And that's not a good news. And the reason why these guys could be leaving is because it's almost election season in Nigeria. So they recognize that there will be a lot of unpredictability in the Nigeria market, right? Going forward. So, they're slowly reducing their, exposure to the Nigeria market. So that's one reason. So another reason is not far-fetched, right? Alhaji Dangote, the refinery IPO. A lot of investors, both retail and institutional investors, a lot of investors are actually setting money aside for that IPO. So when that happens, money these investors could have used to, buy the dip in this current bearish regime. In fact, them staying on the sideline is the reason why we're in a bearish regime anyway. So I just can't wait for that IPO to be over with. Then another reason is improving fixed income in the Nigeria capital market, right? So yesterday, I think Omo bill auction was conducted, and I think the stop rate was around 20 to 21%. So you can imagine if you, an investor, sees an opportunity, a fixed income opportunity of around 20%, and you're going to tie down your money in the stock market for some time, but this 20% is guaranteed with Omo. Won't you just, go lock in your money right in there? Well, even though Omo is kind of like a new development right now, the treasury bill investment, the stop rate should be around like 17-18% right now. So it's all looking so attractive, and a lot of investors would like to move money. Most are actually moving money in there to enjoy, such attractive rates. Especially when you see just how bearish the market is right now, they'll keep moving money in there. That will also cause the market to remain in a bearish regime. So patience is all we need right now, because I think after the IPO, I just can't wait to see what happens next in this Nigeria market. So I noticed a new development in Firstholdco yesterday. I told you first off, right? Firstholdco is struggling to stay up because of low volume. But yesterday I noticed, slight buy volume came into this Firstholdco market. So basically 89.33 million buy transaction, occurred in this market yesterday. It's not so much, but the question is, will it move this market? That's the question. Now, from what I see, we will need more of these steady buyers. Now, these buyers that bought yesterday, right, that tried to push Firstholdco yesterday, right, it's worthy to note that, this buy activity for yesterday wasn't that of smart money, because although it's very early to conclude if this is the activities of smart money, because smart money typically accumulate over a period of like maybe 1 week, 1 month, days, right? So it's very early for me to start judging if this activity was that of a smart money looking to want to accumulate more of Firstholdco. However, my best guess is, this was just, HNIs, retail with, very good money. So that's my best guess for now, because Firstholdco is still struggling to stay up. Like I've been saying, smart money has left. So these are the activities of majorly retail investors. But what's actually puzzling to me right now is, if you see, this volume is far more than the previous low buy volume we'll be getting, right? That's why I'm deeply suspicious of this volume of yesterday. It's a huge volume. But as the day goes by, we'll keep following it up to know what's actually happening. But I know Firstholdco is weak and it's struggling to stay up. It's weak. And there's another thing worth noting that I said it the last time in my previous video, that institutional buyers do not buy at the top. They don't make that mistake. The only reason smart money will buy at the top is simple: distribution, right? They want to sell their holdings, right? They want to sell their position, but they can't do it at once because of the huge money they have in the market. So if they sell at once, it will crash the market, it will crash the price at which they want to take profit from. So what they will typically do is they will keep selling little by little at the top. So when it seems that people are noticing their exit from the market, they'll buy more to convince retailers that they are still in the market, but they're actively selling, right? So they'll buy more to attract the greedy investors, the FOMO buyers, the hype buyers. They'll buy more. So, but you'll be thinking, this market is still going up, but they're actually exiting on you. They are dumping on you. This volume, it actually happened there, because see this huge sell volume. This actually means smart money left, but typically this candle, right, should have matched up to this volume, meaning this candle, this sell candle, should have been something like this, huge, because see the volume of sales, right? So that candle should have been something like this, huge as well, but it's not huge, it's small, meaning FOMOs were buying, but smart money were absorbing most of the buying, right? Most of the buy orders, it was smart money selling to the retailers. So that's why you see huge volume of sale but small candle, right? That's what is going on. So I'm deeply suspicious of this trade, very suspicious. But more days ahead will give us clarity as to what is going on, right? But generally, I'm still of the sentiment that Firstholdco is struggling and is getting weak. So we will need the activities of strong money or continuous volume of this kind of range to keep this market alive, right? So let's see what's going on in Aradel. Well, it's something like a bloodbath going on in Aradel, right? And this happened after their ex-dividend date. Not even after ex-dividend date, because they pay dividend around July 10th. No, I'm wrong. Actually, it's not July 10th. What actually happened on July 10th was their ex-dividend date. However, they paid dividend on July 30th. So typically what's going on right here is, this is July 10th. So people held their stocks till July 10th, right? So which was their ex-dividend date. So soon as after that ex-dividend date, July 10th, so it's very obvious to see what happened next, right? Both institutions, retail buyers, they just kept dumping on themselves, right? They just kept dumping around June, right? Around June, when the initial correction started, most people were actually buying the dip. Then I could remember me advising some people on X, Twitter, that you buying the dip right now is kind of premature, because there's a lot down the line for which we don't know what's going to happen next. So I was pretty much ignored. I remember someone tweeting back at me telling me that, well, there's nothing bad in accumulating right now. You know, that's just the mindset of a long-time investor. Accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. Well, I said, okay. I mean, go on, keep accumulating. So that whole X conversation, right? That Twitter conversation happened around these dates, around June, right? Around June. But today is, you know, August 27. We're still dipping. We're still correcting. So sometimes patience seems to be the key. Patience really is the key. Because after that initial dip, you know, there was ex-dividend date, there was dividend payment, which further accelerated, you know, dumping of Aradel. And right now, it's still not safe to buy Aradel because you might be thinking this is discount level, like it will be cheaper to like take a position right now. But guess what? You might still encounter more dips. So my best advice is just to hold on. Let's at least see some sort of accumulation from smart money, right? Before you make a move of, you know, accumulating as a retail investor. So hopefully when I see the activities of, you know, strong money, you know, strong money by smart money, yeah, I'll notify my core members right in my Telegram group. So we start taking position in Aradel. So let's see what's going on in Zenith Bank. Yeah, Zenith Bank. So looking at this chart, I can say Zenith Bank has a high level of trust in the minds of Nigerian investors, both institutional investors, which are smart money, and both retail investors. Because look at what is going on. You know, despite the fact that, you know, the correction of, that's the first correction of June happened, not much of profit taking really occurred. Because if you see this volume down here, you realize that no surge of this type of, you know, high volume. If anything, this only occurred during accumulation phase, right? So after the you know, June correction, then at the beginning of July recovery, you can see smart money began to accumulate Zenith. It started from here. So smart money began to accumulate Zenith. They began to accumulate. Again, just like what happened in GTCO. So when they realized that ASI was still getting weak due to broad-based sell-off, right? They paused their accumulation activities. So especially, they actually stopped on August 3rd, Monday, which was last 2 weeks. Coincidentally, that was the same, you know, duration, right? 2 weeks ago was when I told my core members in my Telegram group to just, you know, hold on, you know, to just suspend buying any stock on the NGX 2 weeks ago. So smart money also stopped their activities, their, you know, accumulation activities on Zenith Bank. Well, that's really interesting because after then, what we typically see right now is low volume, and this low volume is the activities of retail investors. So yeah, that's that about Zenith Bank. All right, that's all I have to share for today. See you again tomorrow. Have a nice day.